Hello everyone, it's Pastor Dan coming to you live on a Thursday now to talk about taking a deeper dive into Ephesians. On Tuesdays, Pastor Brad and I are taking a devotional look at Ephesians, but when we first introduced Ephesians on Sunday morning, I said there was also an opportunity for us to take a technical look at Ephesians, issues of scholarship and background information, languages, theology, things like that. And when I said that 2 weeks ago, I was ready to go. I was excited to go. And then I caught myself, and here's why. Preaching pastors have a danger, and the danger is this. Just like everyone else, we have our favorite topics, but we also have a captive audience on Sunday mornings. And so sometimes we dive into those pet projects, those niche topics that we really like, and we think that because we're excited about it, well, you must be just as excited about it also, and we ramble on for an hour or so, and it's only afterwards that we realize you had no interest in that whatsoever. So what I would like to do is I'd like to ask you, what would you like to talk about? And already on Sunday, we got an idea. A couple of you have asked us to go further and deeper into this issue of God's will and choice, issues of election and predestination. This is an area that we could spend several weeks going into. And I only touched on it really briefly on Sunday morning, and there were a couple reasons that I only touched on it briefly. First being that I know for many this could be an overwhelming topic. And I wanted to be sensitive to that, and I didn't want to spend the entire morning on something that might be overwhelming. But also, sometimes there's a fine line between preaching and an informational lecture. And I was worried if I went into too much detail, it might become just that, an informational lecture. Although, ironically, I do think part of Sunday became an informational lecture on something else. But this is an area that I think it would be worth taking our time to just really kind of let it soak in and to take a look at the language that's being used, the scriptures that are being used, and not just the competing scholarship. One scholar says this and another scholar says that, but sometimes even scripture seems to say on the one hand this or on the other hand that. And I think this is something we could spend several weeks on and take our time going through. So that's one example of something we could talk about. Here's a couple other examples. First of all, we could talk about who wrote Ephesians. Now that may seem like an obvious answer. It says right there in the text that Paul wrote it. But if you do any amount of independent study of Ephesians, and I hope you do, I hope you go further and deeper than we're going on Sunday mornings, and maybe even further than we're going during the week on the stream. But inevitably, you're going to see that there are some scholars who questioned whether Paul wrote Ephesians or whether someone else wrote Ephesians in Paul's name. Now, why do they think that? What is it that they're seeing that's raising that question to them? And is there any validity to the points that they're bringing up? And how do we respond to that when we come across those kinds of comments? Something else that we could talk about that I think is kind of interesting, I don't know if anyone else would, but if you were to take a look at probably most Bibles, here's a Bible from our pew, and if you were to open it up to Ephesians and look down at the footnote, you might see a comment telling us that some of the earliest copies of the epistle to Ephesians don't include the phrase in Ephesus. In fact, it doesn't seem to be addressed to anywhere specific. So what do we do with that? What does that mean for the letter? And does that change the meaning of the letter at all? And how does that happen that some copies say this and some copies say that? That's something that we could go into if you were interested, or more broadly. The New Testament puts a lot of attention on the church in Ephesus. Paul lived there for 3 years. That's probably the longest he stayed in one spot on any of his missionary journeys. We have, maybe, an epistle to the Ephesians, but we actually have more letters. 1 Timothy was written to Timothy while he was at Ephesus. The immediate instructions were for him in Ephesus. If you take a look at Revelation, one of the 7 Revelation letters is addressed to Ephesus. So what do all of these texts say? And how do they all work together? And is there some kind of a timeline or an order of reading? And what can we find in that? That's something that we could go into. Those are some examples. But again, I'd like to hear from you. What would you like to talk about? So if there is something that you'd like to talk about, if you are interested in taking a deeper dive, I'm here to gauge your interest in that. Drop a comment down below. Drop a comment to me by text or email or on the Facebook page and let me know, yes, I would like to go deeper. These are the questions I have. These are the areas that I'd like to go into more detail with. We already have a request for one. What are some others? So that's the idea of taking a deeper dive into Ephesians, or maybe even some other areas. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for taking some time to watch this video. Hope to see you on Sunday, either in the room or on the stream. And then next Tuesday, as Pastor Brad and I come back and we take a devotional look at Ephesians. Thank you, everyone. God bless.